David, hey, congratulations on your documentary, Your Friend Memphis.
Thank you so much.
I know we actually talked about this last time. Same movie. Last time I think it was South by Southwest. I think that was what last year or something. So,
2022, yeah.
well, hey, you're still on the festival circuit for this documentary. I think your last showcase was at what the Toronto International Film Festival. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we actually, our last one was Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, I think in February. Sorry, there's a plane overhead. Um, yeah, we're pretty much at the end of our festival run, just getting ready to stream at the end of this week.
Oh wow, that is terrific, and it is such a good run too. So yeah, so we're back talking about this film again. If pardon if there's any repeatable questions, but new promotion, new audiences, so they have to hear it again. Is what sparked you to make this documentary about Memphis?
Yeah. Um, so I first met Memphis when he and I were both hired as production assistants a lot like almost a decade ago on a this under budgeted film Christmas film shooting outside Austin where Memphis was living. And uh I just remember he had this really like exciting energy. He was kind of going around set chatting with different folks, and uh we were shooting overnights in a dog park, and it was a month-long shoot. And just a few nights into this shoot, Memphis was kind of unceremoniously let go, and this was in front of the rest of the cast and crew, and it was a really uncomfortable experience for me. And so I had gotten to know him a little bit when he and I were on set, but I ended up reaching out afterwards to get to know him a little bit better and to understand what had happened on this film set. And he showed me that he had been creating these YouTube vlogs, these direct to camera YouTube vlogs for the better part of a decade at that point, because he had this unmet desire to what he called share his story. Um, and I was, interested at that point in what it was like for him to work on film sets as a person with cerebral palsy. And I asked him if we could, maybe shoot a short documentary exploring that. But when I went to film it, he wanted to tell me about working in film, but what he also wanted to tell me about was this girl that he had met on a different film set a year before that, who he was sure at that point was his soulmate, and she was the closest friend he had ever had. And so at that point, the story really broke open for me and became a much larger tale of independence and finding a career and love and all the things that make life challenging and universal.
It's funny. You started with a short documentary, and this ended up with a becoming a 5 year journey between you and Memphis. That is actually hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. It was not a short road.
Now, for those people who don't know, can you define the cerebral policy for people who are unfamiliar with this disability?
Sure. It exists in different forms for a lot of different folks, but it's not genetic, and it affects speech and motor movements. And so in Memphis's case, it uh, presents as a minor speech impediment, um, and he walks a little bit differently than I do.
Absolutely. Now, what is your overall impression of Memphis as people watch this documentary? A person with disability, he has extremely high expectations and ambitions, and yet his parents always portray him with as a certain type of stubbornness. But I want to hear from you because you spent a lot of time with him, and you develop your own friendship with him.
Yeah. I mean, I've known him for so long. Uh, in many ways, the disability kind of gets out of the way pretty early, and that was a goal for me in making this film, was not to erase the disability, but to demonstrate that it is one part of a, a rich life of someone who wants to be a filmmaker and wants to find love and is ambitious and, as you said, stubborn. Um, Memphis is not the kind of person with a disability who is satisfied with what his mom calls a safe little life. Um, I don't know if anyone is satisfied by that, but Memphis doesn't want to live in a group home. He doesn't want to bag groceries for the rest of his life. He knows what he's capable of, and he wants to be able to live a full life as we all do. And when society projects their own sense of limitation onto him, he becomes frustrated, which makes sense. Because if someone was telling me you can't make documentaries because we don't think you can make documentaries, it would make me really, really want to make a documentary. Um, so it doesn't mean that Memphis is capable of everything he thinks that he is, and neither am I. But we all deserve the freedom to try, um, and I think that's one of Memphis's core beliefs.
I also found it fascinating that you portrayed the the parent son relationship, because it's all, I feel like it's not just Memphis, but it feels like it's any parent's son or daughter relationship out there as their kids go into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think parents out of love often, want to say maybe, we want you to follow your dreams, but also we want you to be safe and to know when things will become dangerous or bad. But I think when you're growing up and leaving the care of your parents, you are finding yourself and you're trying to prove um, what you're capable of, and yeah, I mean, you're really just trying to like figure out what your life is going to look like. And so I don't blame Memphis's parents for being worried about him, but it was going to be a losing battle to try to control someone like Memphis.
Now tell us about the involvement of Seneca into your project, because she's also a very important cog, and she has her own story to tell.
Absolutely. We met Seneca, part of the way through the years that we filmed, because Memphis had met her on a film called Loveland, that they both had roles in, because Memphis works in front of and behind the camera. Um, and on this film set, they had become really close friends. She lived on the other side of Texas, but they would visit each other every once in a while. Um, and so we met her through Memphis, and we in the film follow the evolution of their friendship. Um, and luckily, maybe at the beginning she didn't quite know what she was getting into. I don't know if anyone does with verite documentaries, uh, but she has become like um, a real advocate for the film. Um, I think she believed in what we were doing, which we didn't always know. But we're just really grateful to Seneca for allowing us to bring her into the fold and to share her story as well.
I know it's funny when you do these documentaries. I guess that the hardest thing is to gain the trust of your subjects. I mean, how did you convince like Seneca and the parents? I guess there's very little convincing for Memphis for those people who watch this documentary.
Yeah, I credit Memphis with just having the courage to say yes to life. So that's fair. But I think it comes down to putting the time in. Part of the reason that um, part of the reason that they allowed us in so deeply, each of the characters, is because we kept coming back and we demonstrated that for us this was not a few days shoot. to project a story onto them and then edit whatever we wanted to. We really entered with an exploratory mindset, not knowing where the story would take us, and with our eyes and ears open, ready to truly, document what was taking place. Um, and I think that documentary subjects can feel that, can feel the desire for authenticity, and over time become more comfortable to share who they really are. But I'll add, we didn't always know this was going to be 5 years of shooting. Every year we filmed, we were like, this is our last year. And then suddenly you get home and you're going through the footage and you realize that the film in front of you is not fully capturing what you experienced on set or on location. And so every year it was about going back and trying to complicate the story and build a fuller picture of who these people are.
So at which point did you realize your narrative, your story that you actually accomplished, and that it is time to end this 5-year journey?
Um, yeah, part of it is eventually it just gets ripped from your cold dead hands. You want to hold on to the film and keep making it forever, keep trying to make it better, but ultimately at some point I've learned you just have to let go and hope that it connects with the audience in the way that you want it to. But more specifically, um, I think we realized that, of course, Memphis's story would never end. None of our stories end, but that we had captured a particular chapter of his life, from one inflection point to the next over this set of years that we filmed. And we knew what our big scenes were. We knew what sort of the pivotal moments were. And we just at some point had to close that chapter. And now Memphis is on to totally different things. He's moved to a different state. Like his life continues on. We captured just a chunk.
That's true. That's true. Now, on onto the scheduling part, because 5 years is a long time to follow a person, and of course, you personally have a life and other projects too. How did you handle the schedule of filming Memphis throughout all these years? I mean, is it just random days, or there's like pivotal moments of his life that they called you in that should be filmed?
No, actually, for all the remarkable moments we managed to capture on camera, there was not too much of a plan. I don't live in Texas, and my producer Ben Edelman, who filmed the whole movie with me, also doesn't live in Texas. He and I live on in California and New York, and so we created a tradition of meeting for about 2 weeks a year in Texas and filming what was happening. We realized early on we couldn't prescribe a story for Memphis even if we tried. He's always 2 steps ahead. And so we designed the filmmaking such that we would show up without too much of a plan, without, we'd ask Memphis, what do you have going on these days once we had our flights? And he'd be like, nothing much. And then we'd show up and it would just be insane. It would just be like all kinds of stuff because we all think that we're boring, but actually life is exciting, and Memphis's is doubly so. We surrendered to the unknown, and we would show up and follow him where he went.
Did you ever have like the urge to basically interject yourself into a film? After all, this is a 5-year process, and you get to see how he changed his life. And do you like sit down and say, wait, Memphis, maybe this is not a good idea, or so on, or do you just let him decide what he wants to do and just
Yeah.
be that fly on the wall?
I won't say that we were flies on the wall. It's impossible to do that. I mean, of course, our presence with him changed some things. But as I said, we couldn't direct Memphis if we wanted to. He wouldn't accept that. And we knew that reality was more interesting and more exciting. So yeah, sometimes he would ask us our opinions on what he was doing, and we'd share them. but Memphis sees life as an adventure and as a grand experiment to pursue his passions and his goals, and to feel fulfilled by that adventure regardless of the outcome. So, he didn't want his parents' advice. He didn't really want our advice. He was just out there living life, and doing his best, and learning from the outcomes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And David, these stories really never end. So do you keep track of Memphis today, and if do you know where he is now?
Of course, yeah, yeah. Memphis is living. So the whole time we filmed, he was living in Texas. Um, Shortly after we finished filming, and we've got a few shots of this at the end, he moved to Denver, partially because weed was legal there, and he likes to get high, and there were job opportunities. There's greater government support for people with disabilities there, and so he's on to like a really great chapter of his life, and I think he's happy to wave Texas goodbye for the moment. But yeah, we stay in touch. We haven't filmed with him more, and I think everyone is grateful to everyone in the film is grateful to be free of our prying eyes. Um, but we remain on great terms, and send them the best always.
Absolutely. That sounds great. And I'm just curious, and you probably don't know. Do you know where Seneca is now?
Yeah, she's still in Texas. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That is terrific. Well, David, let me leave with one last thought. As your film, your friend Memphis, is coming out on streaming really soon, and audiences everywhere will have a chance to watch your film, your documentary. What is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after watching your friend Memphis?
Um, I don't know that there's one takeaway. I think, in my experience screening the film at throughout our festival run and throughout our rough cut screenings, different people tend to connect with different characters and take away very different messages from the story because it's a complicated one. What I would say is that people with disabilities are not a monolithic population. Memphis's life is so different than someone else who has cerebral palsy, and I think we have a tendency as a society to assume that for some reason people with disabilities would have similar life experiences, and they don't. And I think what I hope is built into your friend Memphis is the complexity and the richness of Memphis and only Memphis's life, and of course the interplay with his family and friends. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope to complicate the conversation around how people with disabilities live in America, the resources available to them, particularly in a state like Texas. But I'll let audiences come up with their own takeaways.
Well, it's such an eye opener, and it's a very good narrative for a documentary. Your friend Memphis, everyone should definitely check it out. David, thank you very much for speaking to us again and carrying this conversation again. I know it this has been a very long journey for yourself, but now the whole world gets to see this film.
A long journey, but one I am grateful for. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.